Welcome, this is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of January 20th, 2020. The subject of this week's podcast is all about that bass. And look, if I had some money for licensing, I'd be playing you a short excerpt from that song right now. But interesting side note before I get into the main bit of the podcast, a lot of podcasters believe that you can use any piece of music that you want if it's under 3 seconds. Now, that's not actually true. There are some rules that say, for example, if you're a radio station or Spotify or something like that, you don't have to pay royalties on a song if you use under 3 seconds of it, but you still have to be part of that system, registered in it, and all of that sort of thing, which there's no reason for this particular podcast to be doing that. Also, I should point out that a lot of folks get this podcast over YouTube, and YouTube is pretty good about sniffing through your material and finding copyrighted stuff, and they would put ads in this podcast if, in fact, I used somebody else's music. Fair enough. Anyway, let's get back to all about that bass. What do I mean about it? I mean, let's talk about masts and mounts. A mount is the thing that actually connects to your home, to your eave, to your chimney, whatever. And the mast is the pole that kind of sticks up. Oftentimes these things are sold together. In the case of solid signal J-mounts, for example, it's just one kind of assembly. But in the case of a chimney mount, the mount part is sold separately, and then you put a mast, whatever that you want, on it. First, let's talk about the masts, because this is something that there's a lot of confusion there, and you're going to get an interesting take on this, and you're probably going to be surprised about what you hear. There is nothing really special and super magical about a mast. As I once said to my comrade Jake Buckler, it's just a pole, dude. It's just a pole. Of course, I'd appreciate if you'd buy your mast from solidsignal.com, but to be truthful, pretty much any stiff piece of material works pretty well. I've done some articles on the Solid Signal blog about how you can use a solid wood post if you want. You can use a piece of fencing. You can do just about anything that's going to get the job done if you can find a way to attach it where it needs to be attached. And so if that means that for whatever reason you decide to get this material locally, well, I wouldn't blame you. As I said, I sure wish you would shop at solidsignal.com for that sort of thing, but I'm pro-consumer, and I want to make sure that at Solid Signal we offer the best value. And if we don't offer the best value, let us know. We'll do the best we can, and sometimes if that's still not enough, we want you to have a long-term relationship with us. If that means we lose out on the sale of one pole, that's not the point. Long-term, we want to take care of you. But when it comes to the actual mounts, there is a difference. You really won't find antenna or satellite mounts at your local home store. You'll have to buy them somewhere. And this is where you really need to be calling solidsignal.com, emailing them, or working with the folks in the chat room to try to figure out what you want. There are a number of different sizes of masts and mounts, and it really depends if you're using an antenna, a satellite dish, or that sort of thing. And there's a lot of different ways to get those mounts attached the way that you need them to be attached. The most common is the eave mount. For example, a J-mount or something like that. Mounting to an eave is really a good idea because this is a non-structural part of your house. And let me back up for a second because not everybody knows what an eave is. The eave is that piece of wood, they call it a fascia board sometimes, that's on the side of the house. When your roof kind of peaks away from your house, by about 2 feet or so, then there's a piece of board at the end that kind of looks like it's mostly just decorative. This whole structure is called the eave, and the board itself is called the fascia board. Mounting an antenna or satellite dish to your eave just makes sense because the last thing you really want to do, if you can avoid it, is drill into your roof. If a little water leaks through your eave, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is that, what's ever under that eave is going to get wet. If a little water leaks through your roof, well, you've got a completely different situation. So we do have eave mounts, we have chimney mounts, which a lot of folks have brick chimneys. If you do happen to have one, be careful, of course. I'm not talking about a 400-year-old brick chimney. You got to be super careful with something like that. But a lot of times you can strap a mount to your chimney, and it's going to be the most secure way of getting that antenna up high. It's something that you can do yourself, and as I said, you need to make sure that your chimney's in good shape first But if your chimney is structurally sound, there shouldn't be any problem mounting an antenna to it. I myself have had a chimney-mounted antenna for over 50 years. I didn't put it up, obviously, but the chimney mount that I'm using has been there since, basically baby boomers were kids, which is saying an awful lot. There are non-penetrating mounts, which are mounts that are designed to go onto the roof and make sure you're not putting any holes in them. There's a lot of different ways to make sure that they stay still. Most of these involve putting a really heavy object like a bucket of water or a concrete block on the mount, and you have to be careful and make sure that your roof is strong enough to support this sort of thing, of course. But this is a great solution if you cannot mount to an eave for whatever, and especially if you're in a commercial building where you've got a flat surface, and a lot of times commercial building roofs are nice and strong. There are also specialized mounts that you can use that actually will help you. You can mount to the side of the house. You can actually use what's called an under eave mount, which if you can't mount to the fascia board, you can mount to the actual eave itself, and the whole thing kind of is shaped like a big U. Some people call it an elephant trunk mount, and it lets you attach exactly what you need, exactly where you need. If you are unable to get up high, you can simply sink a concrete pole into the ground. There are a couple of different ways of doing this, and you'll find articles on how to do it at the Solid Signal blog, but it boils down to what I tend to suggest to people is pour a nice thick concrete pad, and then take and drill a hole in the bottom of your mast, run a couple of bolts into it so that the concrete will catch on the bolts and the mast itself won't spin around and around because the concrete has caught the bolts. Easy way of doing this. And actually, I know a number of facilities where this has been done with a 10-foot mast sticking out of a chunk of concrete, and these people are super happy. It's really up to you to decide how you want to mount. And at Solid Signal, we tend to make it very, very easy because we have so many choices for what you want to do. One of the most innovative ones that I've seen is really designed for when you're putting up your roof, and it's technically a non-penetrating mount, but it's designed to be put down before you put on the roof tiles. And if you're putting down ceramic tile, you see a lot of folks don't want to drill into ceramic tile. It tends to be very brittle, and they want to find a way to actually mount without damaging the ceramic tile. Well, planning ahead means putting this mounting system under the ceramic tiles before you put those ceramic tiles down. If you're doing that, then what's happening is the tiles themselves take a lot of the weight, and the mount is big enough so it's not just putting that weight on one or two tiles, it's spreading it out, and it gives you a nice secure way of mounting what you need to mount. You'll find all this stuff at solidsignal.com, https://www.solidsignal.com. If that wasn't clear enough, there will be a link to it at the end of this podcast. Please do me a favor, support Solid Signal, which are the folks who keep this podcast going week in and week out. They will help you whether you prefer phone, email, chat, or just self-service, doing a search for it yourself kind of thing, to find the mounting solution that really works for you. You'll find tutorials on how to mount at the solidsignal.blog. And one more bit of business I sure would appreciate if you would click the subscribe button, because it makes me look good to my boss. You don't actually have to listen to the podcast after that if you get a subscription notice. I kind of wish you would, but like I said, I'm trying to look good to upper management here, folks, so click that subscribe button and support your local podcaster. That's about it for the Solid Signal podcast for this week. I'll be back next week with even more content, and until then, have a great one.